If you're planning to take a cruise to Norway at any point in the future, then listen up. Regardless of which cruise line or cruise ship you choose, there are so many things that you'll want to think about to make sure that you get your trip right, and also to make sure that you don't make some of the big mistakes that so many people do when they cruise to this part of the world. In this video today, I'm going to share with you 10 of the top things that I think you need to be thinking about when you're planning your cruise to Norway or once you're on board the ship. If you enjoy this video today and if you find it useful, then it would be great if you would think about supporting my channel by clicking both the thumbs up and the subscribe buttons. Anyway, let's get started on number 1. And that is that when you plan to cruise to Norway, it's really important that you think very carefully about the type of cabin or stateroom that you want to book for your cruise. When I started cruising, so many people told me that it was just down to personal preference as to whether or not I would want an inside cabin, in other words, a room with no window, or a balcony cabin, with the main sales pitch being that a balcony would allow me my own personal space to sit outside, and it would allow me the opportunity to get some fresh air, whereas if I was on the inside of the ship, I wouldn't be able to do that. However, the more cruises that I've taken to Norway, the more I've realised that there's so much more to it than just having a bit of outside space or having a bit of fresh air. When you look to book your cabin, it's super important that you remember cruises to Norway will often feature travel days or sea days on both sides of your itinerary. On the cruise that I'm on right now, I've had 2 sea days to get to Norway and another 2 to come back home again. That means that I've spent 4 whole days on this cruise ship without getting off, and that in itself might be enough to tempt you to book the higher grade of cabin. That said, I personally absolutely love inside cabins. I love ocean view cabins. So personally, I would never be a huge salesman to persuade you to book that balcony cabin or that suite. Let me tell you more. There are so many cruise ships out there that are designed specifically for cruising in more scenic and also at certain times of the year, colder climates. On those ships, you're going to find lots of venues and lots of public spaces that really do encourage you to look outward from the ship and absorb the views. You should be expecting indoor solariums, indoor swimming pools. You can also expect lots of glass in the public spaces that allow you to really look outside. In my own experience, if I'm cruising to Norway or Alaska on a ship that's been specifically designed for that type of cruising, I would never look to book a balcony cabin. I'd be more than happy staying on the inside of the ship, saving my money, and then using my money to then upgrade my cruise experience elsewhere. And I'd also look to find my favourite seat or my favourite deck on the ship, and I'd enjoy all of the same scenery from out there. Next, let's move on to talk about everybody's favourite or least favourite topic, and that is budgeting and money. It's really important that if you're planning to cruise to Norway in the future, you make an effort to set a budget and understand how much you want to spend or how much you can spend once you get on board before you even take the cruise. Norway in general is known for being a relatively expensive place to visit, and I have found that to be the case on all of my cruises that have gone there. That applies to general holidays to Norway, which might even be why you've chosen to take a cruise, because you don't have to pay for overnight accommodation, you don't have to pay for evening meals, you just pay for the cruise fare and then the ship will take you to various parts of the country. What I've found is that if you then look to take shore excursions in Norway, you can sometimes be expected to pay upwards of £100 per person per excursion in order to get a good experience. Now, I'm not saying don't take excursions here. What I am saying is do a bit of homework before you get on board to understand how much those excursions will cost so that you're not caught off guard. You can also use websites like Viator, for example, to try and save a little bit of money on your excursions. If you'd like to check out Viator, then you can find a link to their website down in the description of this video. Next, Think about your itinerary and think about what that means for various parts of the onboard experience. The big example that I would give you is if you think about dining times, you'll want to make sure that you select a dining time for your cruise that isn't going to repeatedly clash with when the ship sails out of port. On the cruise ship that I'm travelling on right now, there are 2 set dining times. The early sitting goes in for dinner at 6 p.m, and the later sitting goes in for dinner at 8 p.m. Most of our ports of call have featured a sail away around 5:30 or 6 p.m, meaning that if you are looking to be out on deck taking photographs and fully absorbing those sail away views, then you wouldn't want to be going to the earlier dinner sitting. However, if you are of the other contingent who would much rather be enjoying their evening meal, enjoying a few drinks while the ship sails out of port, then the other argument would apply to you and you actually would want to book into the earlier dinner sitting. Other things that can feature on your Norway cruise itinerary that can really affect what you would want to be doing on board at the time are things like scenic cruising. With some cruise lines, they will take you on trips down the fjord, up the fjord, and then they'll rotate the ship to come back out. Those evenings are absolutely incredible, and you'll often find that they'll take place once the ship leaves a port of call. Now, why is this important, and how can this impact what you might want to do on board? Well, think about it. If you're on a cruise that's sailing down an absolutely stunning fjord, do you really want that to be when you've booked dinner at a restaurant with no windows? No, of course you don't. Personally, I would choose on those evenings to think about either going for dinner much later or maybe even ordering room service to have a quick dinner to then head out around the ship to make sure that I can see all that there is to see. You might also want to think about simple things like when you're on the scenic cruising evenings or mornings or afternoons, wear your favourite outfits and get some amazing photos with what's going on around you, because in all honesty, I have taken multiple cruises to Norway now, and every single time, I'm blown away by what I see from these cruise ships. So yes, think about the itinerary on your cruise and think about how that might impact various parts of the onboard experience. Number 4, and this one is one of the most important ones. It's so crucial that you, when you plan to cruise to Norway, get your packing right. That's right, you knew this one was coming. I've met so many people on Norway cruises who say, oh, I'm not going to leave the ship today because it's cold outside and I don't have a heavy jacket, or it's raining outside and I don't have an umbrella. My advice to you would be that the weather in Norway can be incredibly changeable no matter what season you visit in, and it can also be very unpredictable. That means that if you look at a weather app before you leave the house 7 days before your cruise, and it says it's going to be 20 degrees Celsius with full sun, I'd still take a coat because there's a pretty decent chance that you're going to get a bit of rain during your cruise. It's really important to remember that Norway is such a beautiful and green and lush country, and as I always say about Scotland, there's a reason for that, and that is that they get a lot of rain throughout the year. That said, it's an absolutely beautiful place, and if I was having to stay on the ship because I just didn't have the right clothes with me, I'd really be kicking myself. If you are cruising out of the UK and you live in the UK, you'll find that your cruise line will operate a very flexible and very relaxed luggage policy. That means that you can take an extra few kilograms of clothes. You might even want to take an additional bag so that you can take things like waterproof jackets, anoraks, an extra pair of trousers, maybe even some waterproof trousers, so that whatever the weather throws at you for your Norway cruise, you can still get out there and see the place. Number 5, think about footwear. This is arguably on the point of packing, but I did want to very specifically talk about shoes versus walking boots. I meet lots of people on Norway cruises who do travel with walking boots because they argue that you can get far further from the ship, you can climb far higher than the ship to get what would be considered some of the best photographs in whichever fjord or maybe even city you're visiting. Now, you don't need to take robust walking boots if you are visiting, for example, Oslo, and you want to go and explore the city. Trainers or flat shoes will be absolutely fine for that type of day ashore. But if you are cruising to the Norwegian fjords and you would like to climb up some hills, get some spectacular views looking down over the ship and over the fjord itself, then you're probably going to want to consider packing your walking boots in your bag with you. I can think of nothing worse than having the wrong footwear and then either finding it incredibly difficult or incredibly dangerous when I'm trying to climb up to take photos from a better viewpoint. I think I would just feel so much more relaxed knowing that I've got walking boots there should I want to go for a walk. That said, don't worry on that front, because if you don't want to go for a walk and if you'd rather take a sightseeing tour to get arguably the same shots on your camera but without all the effort, then I'm sure your cruise line will offer you an excursion where trainers will be just fine. Number 6, regardless of whether you're new to cruising or you're an experienced cruiser, it's really important that for your cruise to Norway, you think about the topic of seasickness and take a few precautions before you get on board, just to make sure that everything goes okay. Now, the body of water that takes you to Norway from places like the UK or Northern Europe can be a little unpredictable. You can sometimes go outside in the North Sea and you'll find the water to be a little bit bumpy, and other times you'll go out and the sun will be high in the sky and it will feel like you're cruising across a lake. Unfortunately, there is absolutely no way to reserve calm ocean waters, so just a few quick precautions can make all the difference. Think about things like sea bands, which are wearable wristbands that you simply just wear around your wrist. They apply a little bit of pressure onto the pressure point there, and they then work to stabilise you to hopefully kill any feelings of motion sickness. There's also other things like motion sickness tablets, there's herbal remedies, there's adhesive plaster medications that you can apply. There are so many different things. You can get most of these from your local supermarket or over the counter at your local pharmacy, and you can also find a number of different motion sickness medications or solutions in my Amazon store. If you're interested in that store, then you can find the link to that down in the description of this video. It's also important to note that the condition or the state of the water will usually change a little when your ship reaches the fjords. That's due to the fact that, generally speaking, the fjords are pretty protected from the wide open areas of the ocean, meaning that the winds will usually be a lot less and the movement of the water will usually be a lot less. So I always say to people that even if you do feel a little bit off when you're going to Norway, chances are, once your ship actually gets into the fjords, you're going to be absolutely fine. So try not to worry too much. The 7th thing that I think is really important you think about when you cruise to Norway is try and support the local economy to whatever degree you're able to when you cruise. Norway is a part of the world that is repeatedly and constantly looking at the effect that cruise ships are having on the country as a whole. That means that there is talk all of the time about limiting some cruise ships from entering some fjords and whether or not some cruise ships can get into some cities. And one of the big arguments is that cruise ship passengers just don't really help the local economy because so many people get off the ship, don't spend any money, and then they get back on the ship. That means that that local town or village has got this huge cruise ship import. They're impacted by the tourists coming ashore, but they don't really see any significant economic benefit. Now, don't worry, I'm not saying that you should really be going on a £120 excursion every time your ship docks. But what I am saying is that think about if you could support the local economy by going to a coffee shop and buying a flat white or buying a cappuccino or just buying a cake from a local supermarket. There are so many different things that you could do to just show a little bit of support to the local economy. That said, if you do want to get off the ship, take some photos, have a walk around and head back to the ship, that's absolutely fine as well. But yes, number 7, try and support the local economy however you can. Number 8, and this one I have found to be particularly problematic or important on the cruise that I'm on right now. when you cruise to Norway and when you're actually on the trip, be very mindful of the traffic in the places that you visit. Now, you might be thinking, does he mean that the traffic is bad and there's cars everywhere? No, that's not at all what I mean. And in fact, Norway is one of the best countries that I've been to for eliminating a lot of cars off the road. But what I do mean is that this is a very green or a very sustainable country that you're visiting. And that means that things like electric cars and electric buses and electric trucks are way more common than what they might be at home for you. That means that the traffic on the roads will move at a much quieter volume than what you're used to. So make sure that before you step out onto the road, just have a double check to make sure that there's not an electric car coming towards you, because that could end in a pretty difficult situation. It's not just cars, buses and trucks that you have to think about. In a lot of the ports of call in Norway, especially if you're visiting a larger city, there will also be things like electric scooters that you can hire using various mobile apps. You find these scooters all around the world, but I found them to be particularly prevalent in Norway. These can move at a pretty high speed, so it's important that you keep a lookout for them, similar to looking for electric cars, looking for electric buses. Just do a double check and make sure that there's not an electric scooter coming towards you. Number 9. It's possible on your cruise to Norway that you might get to experience either the Northern Lights or the midnight sun. Both of these things are absolutely incredible to experience, but it's really important that you time your cruise correctly to make sure that you maximise your chances of getting to see these. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let me tell you about the first time that I took a cruise to this part of the world. I cruised in July, which meant that it was the height of the summer season in Norway, and I was desperate to catch a sighting of the Northern Lights. I'd heard so many people previously say, I went to Norway, I saw the Northern Lights, it was amazing, and you need to do that too. What I didn't think when I booked my cruise for the July, I didn't think that Norway gets so much daylight at that time of year. If you're looking to see the Northern Lights, it's obviously important that it's dark enough to see them, and that's not going to happen if it's broad daylight at 11 p.m. If you take a cruise over winter, however, you stand a much better chance of seeing the Northern Lights. If it's the midnight sun you're interested in, then a summer cruise will be absolutely perfect, because that's when that part of the world gets the most daylight. And in fact, if you go up the very north of the country, it's going to be daylight pretty much all day and pretty much all night, which is quite something to experience. So yes, number 9, if you want to see either the Northern Lights or the midnight sun, make sure that you book your cruise at the right time of year to see them. Number 10, you're going to Norway, you're going to see some absolutely incredible sights. Make sure that you know how to work your camera before you get on the ship. I meet so many people, even on the ship that I'm travelling on right now, who have no idea how to work things like their mobile phone to take a picture of what they're looking at. I get so frustrated on their behalf when I see someone standing pointing at an amazing sight, thinking they're taking the picture, but they're not. It must be so annoying if you then go home, you look to show someone a picture, and you don't have it in your phone. I can't even imagine how frustrating that would be. If you've got a new phone, a new tablet, a new camera, or if you just haven't ever sat down to figure out how to actually use that piece of equipment, let me recommend that you do that before you board your cruise ship to go to Norway, because this place is absolutely beautiful and you're going to want to take a picture or two in order to remember it. Now, that's the top 10 things that I think you need to be thinking about if you're planning to cruise to Norway at any point in the future, regardless of which cruise line or cruise ship you're planning to do that with. Now, I could go on all day with so many other things, but I'd love to hear from you, because at the end of the day, I'm just one person, and we also don't have all day for me to keep going with so many more things. Let me know down in the comments, have I missed anything that you would love to share with all of our fellow travellers down in the comments, because I'm sure that people out there currently planning their cruises to Norway would love to hear from you, so let us know down there. Now, if you have enjoyed this video today, then it would be great, as I mentioned earlier, if you'd think about supporting my channel by clicking both the thumbs up and the subscribe buttons. If you'd like to learn more about cruising to this part of the world, and if you'd like to see so much more from my trips, then why not come and join me over in this video. Here, I talk to you about a very recent discovery for me, and that is smaller ship cruising. I've taken my last few cruises on much smaller ships, exploring parts of Norway that I, to be honest, didn't think was possible to explore by cruise ship. I'll hopefully see you over there. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.